No, you're dying to know. We have no idea.
What?
We don't know. It's obviously a big number, but we don't know the answer. We're going to play a game, the Hydra game, based on Hercules, Greek mythology, the second labor of the 12 that Hercules had to complete to kill the Lernaean Hydra. It had 9 heads, and every time Hercules chopped off a head, 2 grew back. And that's why this was deemed sufficiently challenging for Hercules. And he kind of cheated because he got fire and burnt the wound so that the heads couldn't grow back. But there's a mathematical way to solve this and figure out how many heads would Hercules actually have to chop off for this to end. And that is the Hydra game.
Surely it will never end.
You have to define the rules. In the Hydra game, the rules are potentially a little bit different to how the legend of Hercules is told. But we can figure out how many heads Hercules chopped off if the Lernaean Hydra followed the mathematical rules of the Hydra game.
Let's hear it, mate. I'm ready.
All right, so the rules are, you have a root. So this is R. This is the start of your tree. And it's what we call a rooted graph. So that means there are some points coming out of your root, and then they have some points. So rooted graph just means that every point, every node has a single parent that it's come from. That's as simple as you might expect. There's no ins and outs flowing. It's just single parent tracing all the way back to an actual root at the bottom. And the way you play the game is you pick what we call a leaf. So sort of stage 1 is pick a leaf X. So a leaf means the furthest point along. Sort of you think of it as an actual tree. So this would be an X that we could pick. And then you also pick an integer N. So a whole number N. And then you remove X. And then step 4 is you add N new branches to X's grandparent. So we've picked X. Let's say N is 2. In the example of Hercules, chop one off, 2 grow back. Remove X. So then this is X. This is the parent. So this one is the grandparent. And of course, this will vary depending on the X you picked. But I now need to add 2 new ones here. So I've chopped off my 1 head of my Hydra. 2 new ones grow, but they grow in a different position. So that's how it differs slightly to the Hercules legend. But these are the rules of the Hydra game. And then you go back and you pick a new leaf X, you pick a new integer N, doesn't have to be the same, and you repeat. So the question we're interested in is how many steps until the game ends. So let's take the Hercules example. So the Hydra for Hercules, 9 heads, and we're going to make it nice and symmetric. So, because I think it would be. So it's going to have 3 sort of main stems, and then each of those has 3 heads. So it's been depicted in many ways throughout history, but this is definitely a way I have seen it depicted. There's a central body which splits into 3, and then each of those 3 bits has 3 heads on it. So N is 2 and N is fixed. So every time we chop off a head, 2 grow back.
From the grandparent.
From the grandparent, yes, exactly. You've already cottoned on that's really key in how this is going to work. So again, it's completely symmetric. So is there a particular head you want to chop off? Let's pretend you're Hercules.
Start at the left to right.
So you can chop that one off. So we've picked our leaf. Our integer N is fixed. It's always 2 for Hercules. We've removed X. Now we go back to the grandparent and we add 2. Left to right, carry on.
Yeah, left to right. Let's keep going.
So chop this one off. Again, 2 more grow. Chop this one off. 2 more grow. So we're getting quite a lot of heads. And there's going to be another one where this leaf node used to be. And again, we're going to chop off another 6. Each time we do it, we get another 2. So we're going to get another plus 12 here, aren't we? So what we're left with is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus another 12 we've added from those last ones. So we actually have 21 branches coming out of R, where R is this big root at the bottom. So we end up with 21 at the end. How many have we chopped off so far? We chopped off 9. So we've taken 9 steps so far. There are 21 left, but every time we chop off one of these, there isn't a grandparent. We go back to the parent, there isn't a grandparent, so that's kind of like an implicit rule in how the game works. We can't go back any further. So no new heads grow when we chop off these ones.
We're pruning back to the...
Exactly. So 21 plus the original 9 that we did. So the total for Hercules is going to be 30 heads that Hercules actually has to chop off.
He can just lop off those last 21 without any growth.
Exactly. And if we'd started here and then decided to chop off one of these bottom ones, we would chop it off, nothing would grow, but you've still got another 8 remaining, like 2 levels deep. So I think the answer would be 30 for this example, regardless of the order in which you chop them off, for this particular example. In other examples, it's going to change, but here, it's 30.
Okay.
So we now know how many heads Hercules has to chop off. It's 30. If the mythical Lernaean Hydra follows the rules of the Hydra game. But a more general question that we could ask is not necessarily how many steps until the game ends. Will the game ever end? Given a specific Hydra in front of you, a specific graph, do we even know the game will ever end? Could there be an infinite number of steps? Because it kind of feels like if you're chopping off one thing, but you're adding on more than one thing, do we know that we'll always get back to the root and there'll be nothing left? So that's the question as a mathematician you're often first interested in is, will it even end before you would ask how many steps? So let's investigate, will this game ever end?
I feel like they always will end.
Okay, that's a good intuition because the answer is yes, it will always end. And the way we're going to do it actually is a proof by induction. You show some of the early steps work and you show that you can always continue to either increase or decrease from those early steps. And you're like, oh, so I just repeat this forever and I'm good. Kind of how it works. So we consider what we call the maximum distance between a leaf and a root. So the root is fixed, it's the bottom of the tree, and the maximum distance in the Hercules example is going to be 1, 2. So we actually had 9 points that were a distance 2, but for Hercules, D, the maximum distance was 2. The other thing we observed in the Hercules example was once we were at a distance 1, that was all that was remaining, we could just chop those off and nothing new would grow. So once we get D equals 1, we're done.
That's a kill shot.
That's the kill shot, right? There could be 4 billion heads at that point, but we don't really care because no new ones come. Like, you care if you're Hercules, you don't want to chop off 4 billion heads, but that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. So that's like, once we get to D equals 1, we're good. So the induction is going to be, can we come up with a way or argue why we can keep reducing D? If we just keep reducing it one by one, no matter what it starts at, we've got to hit 1 eventually and we know it ends once we get to 1. So if D equals 1, we're done. If D is greater than or equal to 2, we're a distance of 2 away. There is some number of heads at that distance. So again, for Hercules, it was 9, but any graph, we're the furthest point away. In my original starting one, again, D was 2, but we only had 2 heads at that distance. There is a number of heads at that distance. Let's call it W subscript D. So W is the number of heads, and we're going to subscript it D, meaning that's the number of heads that start a distance D away. So we just do WD steps. So for Hercules, we did 9 steps. This one up here, we do 2 steps. We just remove all the heads at that level. We don't care about this being necessarily the shortest or best way to solve it. We just want to know there is a way to solve this, like that it will end. We can guarantee it will end. So just do that many steps. And having done WD steps, the new heads grow from the grandparent. So every time you remove distance D, you get some amount, because every step, technically you pick a new integer. It's not always the same one, which complicates things, but it doesn't matter. You add some amount at distance D minus 1. And that's the key. You can never add anything to distance D. You can never add anything to the level you're at. You only add to the one below, because you draw the line from 2 below, but it ends up being a distance 1 from where you were. So after WD steps, whatever number that is, we now only have heads at D minus 1 remain. Could be lots of them, right? This could be a really big number, and every time we do this, we could be adding 4,000 heads every single time, or even billions of heads every time. So it could be an incredibly big number, but we only add heads at the level below. So now, go back up to here and repeat exactly what we just did at D minus 1. We remove them all in some fixed, finite number of steps, only adding things at level D minus 2. So now we're on D minus 2. Again, and every time we do this, there's going to be even more, like the numbers are going to grow, but they can't go to infinity. They can be big, but they can't actually fully run away to infinity. So eventually, might take forever, and we'll see some examples of that shortly, but you're going to get down to D equals 1, and as you said, it's your kill shot. The Hydra's dead.
This feels like you've done quite a sort of a formal... I know you haven't formalised it, but you've done quite an elaborate proof for something that just seems kind of obvious. Like,
I'm glad you think it sounds obvious, because often things that feel obvious are the hardest to prove, because you're starting from a point of, this is obviously true. Like you said yourself, yes, it will end. I think it will end. So it's very helpful to have that intuition and that kind of obvious aspect to you as the mathematician, but then formally writing down those steps, that's where you need training and practice as a mathematician. So I agree with you. It's probably overkill, but as a mathematician, roughly, I feel happy enough with this sketch of an induction. It could be a big number, but we can end the game. So we know it always ends. So now let's think about, can we get a grasp on how big these numbers could be? Now we'll just fix n. So it's some number, like in the Hercules example. Let's just, if it helps, think of it as 2, but it could be any number. Rather than there being a potentially new number that grows, let's just fix it and see what happens there. First step in the induction was remove all the heads at level WD. So that's going to be WD steps, right? So again, in Hercules example, WD was 9. That was the furthest distance away, there were 9. Now, how many have we added? So at the level below, every time we did this, we added n. So the level below started with WD minus 1, meaning the number at distance d minus 1, but we've now added n lots of the steps we've already completed. Next one, remove all of those. It started at WD minus 2. That's what it means, the number at level d minus 2 at the beginning, but now we've added n lots of the ones that we've just done. Because every time we remove one at this level, it adds 1 to the level before it. And this pattern's going to continue. So what this one actually, if you simplify it a little bit, because you get this n times that one, and then you get n squared times the one 2 levels up. So you can kind of continue with the pattern, and eventually you'll get all the way down to w, it would be d minus 1 would be w1. And then you've got n from the level before, but the level before is going to be n lots of w d minus 2, and then you're going to get n squared of the one before it, which is, I'll just write as w3, because that's going to be w1, w2, w3. And this goes all the way up to, it's n to the d minus 1 wd. This would now take us down to w1, and we know we can finish from this point.
Kill shot territory.
That is kill shot territory. There's a lot of heads at this level that we have to now remove all of these heads, but we can finish in that number of steps. So the total number of steps is the sum of all of these.
Total number of slashes of the sword.
Yes, the number of heads that have been lopped off. You want a visualization. This one, W1, only appears once, so it's W1. And then you have, this is W2 times n, and here would be a W2. So you get a 1 plus n times W2, and then the pattern continues, a 1 plus n squared W3, plus dot 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 plus 1 plus n plus all the way up to n to the power of d minus 1 times wd. Because again, wd is in all of these as you move your way up. So that's what it represents. So this is a big number. Now we can actually get an even nicer formula for this. So we can't tell you what the w's are. That's just the number of heads at the beginning. But n is fixed. So given how many you're adding, grow back each time you lop one off, 2 for Hercules. Because these things, and this is a very nice application of a geometric series. So a geometric series is where, to go from one term to the next, you multiply by the same thing. So here you're just multiplying by n to get the next term. There's a formula for that. Okay, so if you have 1 plus n squared plus dot 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 up to n to the k minus 1. Geometric series is 1 minus n to the k over 1 minus n. Geometric series sum up to k terms, where this is the first term, second. So plugging this in here, what you see is the total number of steps for this simplified case is w1 plus. Now here we only have 2 terms, so this is 1 minus n squared over 1 minus n times w2, and then we get 1 minus n cubed over 1 minus n times w3, and then we carry on. This last one is 1 minus n to the d over 1 minus n times wd. This is the total, and the key thing here is you've got these powers of n increasing. So if n is like 4, and you've got like 12 layers, this is 4 to the power 12. That's a very big number. It's exponential growth again, but like exponential growth almost like on steroids. It's like super, super growth, really. And this was for the simple case of n being fixed. So in the Hercules example, just to fully see how this works, D was 2. We said n was fixed at 2. W2 is 9. 9 at distance 2, and just 3 at distance 1. So the total, W1, which is 3, plus, we're only going to stop here for Hercules, 1 minus n squared, so that's 1 minus 4 divided by 1 minus n, which is 1 minus 2. So it's a minus 1 on the bottom, minus 3, so that gives you a 3 multiplied by 9. So it's 3 plus 3 lots of 9, which is 3 plus 27, which is 30. Thankfully, my formula is correct. So this doesn't prove the formula, but we've derived it using geometric series. And again, that's for the simple case when n is fixed. And we can already begin to see how this is going to grow rapidly when n is potentially quite a big number. So we know this is growing quickly, but I cannot stress how quickly. And the best way to see that is with what we call a rapid growth example. We're actually going to specify the rules here. We have to pick a leaf. So we're going to say, pick the rightmost leaf. So it doesn't have to be the furthest away. So in our proof and what we were just talking about, we were always looking furthest away and working our way back. It doesn't work here. It just says pick the furthest one to the right. Just make it simple. So it's like an algorithm to follow. And the way that your n is going to work, the number that grow back, so n is equal to the step you're at. At step 1, 1 grows. At step 2, the second head I'm chopping off, 2 grow back. If it's the third head I'm chopping off from when I started, 3 grow back. So the longer I let this run, the worse it is for me as Hercules. So there's like you want to finish this as quickly as possible. So this is just a way of like building in this kind of concept that n can vary as well. So we just looked at n being fixed, and you can get a bit of an understanding there, but of course n isn't fixed. So this is one way of allowing n to change and actually making it increase all the time. So this is where the growth's really going to explode.
Yeah.
However, we know it ends because we had a proof. It will end, but how quickly does it end? Well, we're going to look at the simplest possible graphs. We're going to look at straight connectors of length y. So if y is 1, you have your root, and you have a single, that's it, length 1, nothing else. So this one's easy. You come in, chop your head off, nothing can grow back, it's dead. So that takes a total number of, let's call it s steps is 1. Now if I have a 2 straight length, again, that's it. So again, we're taking the simplest possible trees. So chop off the rightmost head. This was step 1. So 1 new one grows from the grandparent. I chop off the rightmost head. That's step 2. But nothing can grow because it's at the bottom. Step 3, we've lost that. So for this one, 3 steps. So far, so good. Not growing too quickly. Y equals 3. 1, 2, 3. Rightmost head. You're going to have to help me keep track of the steps in this one. So that's step 1. So I go back to my grandparent and 1 grows. Step 2, chop off the rightmost head. 2 grow. Because it was step 2. Chop off the rightmost head, none of them grow. So I've done 3 steps so far. Step 4, rightmost head, nothing grows. Step 5 is now up here. I now need 5 to go down here. So that was step 5. Now, however, there are 6 left at the bottom, and when I chop off them, nothing new will grow, thankfully. So I think S is going to be 11. So we can see it's not blowing up yet, but you can see where this is going. So y equals 4 next, right? And this is the last one I'm going to draw. And I'm actually not going to do the steps of this one because do you know how many steps there are? 983,038.
Whoa.
So I don't want to do that. Feel free. Anyone watching this is very welcome to follow these rules on a simple 4-length chain. 983,038 steps.
Gosh.
To end the Hydra game. But again, it ends. We know it must end, but it seems like relatively simple set of rules, the easiest possible graph we could have, and yet nearly 1 million steps. And then y equals 5, I know you're dying to know.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
What?
We don't know. No one's been able to actually compute it. Again, we know it ends. We have a proof that it must end, but we do not know how many steps it takes.
Well, I can't believe no one's done that. Like, this seems like something someone will have done with a supercomputer just for the sake.
We don't know. Don't know the answer. The y equals 5. So, challenge to the viewer. Exercise for the viewer.
Oh, I want to know. I want that number.
Yeah. So it's that jump, right? It's that jump from 11 to 983,000 is just crazy.
This wouldn't be hard to compute, though, would it? Like, you just need a powerful computer. Like, it's obviously simple.
It feels like it should be simple, but as someone who, I don't work in computational complexity, which is very much the field you're getting into. So I'm imagining the fact that it hasn't been done suggests it's not as straightforward as we originally think. And I think this was the big clue. That jump is just, there's something else there it's sort of, something else is happening that makes this really tricky. But yeah, no, we don't know the answer for y equals 5. It's obviously a big number, but we don't know the answer.
Awesome. Very cool. If you liked this video, enjoy using your brain, and even fancy the occasional monster, then check out Brilliant, today's episode sponsor. Their ever-expanding collection of courses and quizzes cover a huge range of topics: math, computer science, just science in general. It's incredibly interactive, as I hope you can see here, and it's put together by people who really know their stuff. Clever, caring people who also have a sense of humour. We watch what we eat, we exercise our bodies. Why not make learning a daily habit too? To try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/numberphile or click the link in the video description. And yes, there's a QR code on the screen if that's your thing. Sign up now and you can also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. What's stopping you?
You see, it's jumping by 2 each time, but then it resets at some point. And I want to go back to this. So we'll see what 13 is quickly.
Cool.
So we didn't reset there. I claim we won't reset at the next one either. 14 will be 13,